if it wasn't for our software, people would be writing reports in the evening when they should be having tea with their family and things like this. So that is the real problem that we solve, and they get their time back, essentially. They get time back with their family, which everyone wants. Company had bought a really expensive city centre office in London, but then they started using our app. They ended up, I think, selling that office. They saved ourselves a lot of money doing that. One of our clients started using our app. He said, now I've got all this time, I've got to hang out with my family and my kids. But I've always kind of had a bit of a soft spot for the underdogs. It could be someone in your community who's just trying to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Paul King, co-founder of Flow Software Solutions. Welcome to the Nurture podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will bring you a wealth of interesting people with fascinating ideas across the tech industries, the creative industries, and also uplifting stories of courage and hope. We all go through prickly situations in life. I believe that through courage, creativity, and curiosity, you can find inspiration to nurture your zest. That thing that gets you up and out of bed every morning, the thing that lifts you up and lights up your day. So join me in the studio and let's see who we have in the hot seat today. Hello and welcome to Nurture Your Zest, and boy do I have a special guest today. I am bringing you Paul King, who is the host of the Modern Compliance podcast. He is also the co-founder of Flow Software Solutions, and he also happens to be my better half and husband. So it's so great to see you here, Mr. PK, Paul King.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I'm your better half, but I do appreciate that.
we certainly are very different, which is hopefully a good thing. So I'm so glad that you are here today on my set in my beautiful studio, that you helped me, build so much. And I just want to hear all about you today and about your fabulous startup. And it's not really, you can't really call it a startup anymore, can you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So we're at the point now where we're at 8 staff and growing, as you know. And whether we're a startup or not, I think technically we are still a startup. I don't know what the classification is, but yeah, it's been 5 and a bit years now of growing the business. And we've got 350 clients or something like that. So it's been a great ride. So I run the business with my brother David, and we solve problems for surveyors, problems with report writing, which is a big hair on fire problem in the industry sort of thing, which you already know. But yeah.
I do know, and I know lots about this industry because you and I have chats at home, like this thing happened. So you have those chats. But interestingly, so do your clients. So at home, when they're going home every day, and you just mentioned hair on fire problems, you've got clients who'll be thinking, oh my gosh, I want to be with my family. I want to be hanging out. I want to be having dinner, but I've got to write 30 reports before next week. So can you tell me a bit more about your product? What does Flow Software Solutions actually sell?
So we have an app that's designed for surveying companies, and that could be an asbestos surveyor, fire risk assessor, Legionella expert, soon when I finish my template. And the idea is this app, Flow Mobile Surveying, is something that makes it easy to capture data on site related to a survey. You're capturing photographs, recommendations, items, materials, that kind of thing. And then back in the office, you create a report, and the report is what you sort of provide to your clients. So that is ultimately what you sell. That's what our clients sell. They're selling the report and the expertise. So yeah, this is the app that we sell, and we sell it on a subscription basis. It's called a software as a service. We build the template, and then we sort of sell that on, in a sense, to lots of different companies who can customize it and make it suitable for their way of working. Because not every surveying company is the same. They have different interpretations of the standards. They might carry out surveys slightly differently, and we're aware of that. So we've adapted our product so it can also be adapted, if that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, going back to what you said before, is if it wasn't for our software, people would be writing reports in the evening when they should be having tea with their family and things like this. So that is the real problem that we solve, and they get their time back, essentially. So it's a problem that, when solved, people are really grateful for, because they get time back with their family, which everyone wants. Yeah.
It's super interesting to me because we've had another guest on this season who talked about the bottlenecks that we all get in our business and how sometimes solving one thing can actually create another problem. And I don't know if this is right, so I want you to correct me here, but I'm sure there was an instance once where a client had come in and started using Flow. And then what happened was they started speeding up their report writing, and then they ended up, the new bottleneck was that they now had all these desks and this like physical office space, but staff didn't need it anymore to write reports because they were out doing so many more surveys, that actually there was this new challenge of like, hey, we've got these empty desks.
Yeah, I've got a couple of stories which are quite funny there. So like, yeah, exactly that one. So company had bought a really expensive city centre office in London, and they said it was like this magnificent office, everyone loved it. But then they started using our app. So like a really unexpected side effect of that was they weren't in this really expensive office that they had. The guy put it to me really funnily. He said, you know, the guys in the office couldn't chat up the office girls anymore. I don't know what to think about that, but it was quite funny. But they ended up, I think, selling that office or working from home because it was just cheaper. So they saved ourselves a lot of money doing that. But then another story is that one of our clients started using our app. And he said, "Now I've got this all this time. I've got to hang out with my family and my kids."
So almost like they couldn't justify working late because now they had to go and do that.
Oh, I've got to spend all this time with my kids now. Oh, they're a nightmare kind of thing. It was quite funny. Most of our clients are not like that, so it's just an exception. But there are side effects which you kind of don't expect, and then that's quite cool to hear about them from the clients.
So for anyone listening or watching, like, what do you know about surveying?
You'd be surprised. So now we joke about this all the time. I could totally start my own surveying company. It's like, I don't know the specifics, but you could learn that a little bit. But yeah, like how a surveying company operates, you know, the kind of clients they have, where they get work. I really like to learn all that stuff. So really with a view to like helping our clients to succeed. It's not just like by providing the software. I want to help them succeed in other ways too. So yeah, I think jokes aside, I think I probably could start a surveying company with Mark, who I work with. We always joke about it all the time because we've built so many of these templates and we know exactly how the surveys are carried out. But you kind of have to like become an expert in a sense, because like we lean on surveyors to tell us like how the data capture should be, how the report should be, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, you speak to enough people and you do it enough times, you know it better than half of these guys. We have some amazing clients. So I'm not saying I know better than everyone, but I do know a lot about Legionella, fire safety, asbestos, you name it. Yeah.
Well, I have to be honest. So from a family perspective, obviously, we've talked, I've said you're my life partner, we're married. It was really funny for me because I have your wonderful brother and I have your wonderful sister, who is my sister-in-law, who also works for you. And it was so funny over Christmas, listening to like the jokes, because there were all these jokes about like like noise pollution and air pollution and light pollution and how many lumens something was. And I was just like, what is this family? Like, what has happened? Because if you dial back 5 years, none of us would have known any of that. And so it is interesting how that's developed. And so I do want to just focus a minute on what you were talking about your clients there. Is you have had this incredible thirst for knowledge. It's one of the things that is wonderful about you. There's so many wonderful things, but you just kind of like hyper focus and want to learn. Like at the moment, all you talk about is Legionella. And like, okay, that's great. It's great for your clients, but I don't know anything about it, but I'm learning. But I guess what I wanted to say is, you know, taking that attention to detail and putting all that time and energy into it means that you're constantly improving your product, which is cool. Now, my question is, there's a lot of big organizations out there that have a monopoly sometimes on being able to get work. Do you think that resources like Flow help the little guys? It's like a David and Goliath type feel?
100%. Yeah, my brother started out helping a small company. This is where he started in the industry. So you asked before, like, what do you know about surveying? Like, for me, it's learned, and for David, it's also learned, but from quite a few years ago. So David was brought in as a hairy consultant. He had his dreadlocks, and he looked like Captain Jack Sparrow. And he came in, and his job was to basically create systems for the entire business to run. And that company ended up growing from sort of 30 staff to about 300 when he left. So during the course of that, he became the expert. He became the sort of surveying expert. Now we're both software guys, and that's gratifying to be able to build something that helps a company grow from 30 to 300. So they're no longer the underdogs, going back to your question. But I've always kind of had a bit of a soft spot for the underdogs. I've got to be honest. Like, I like helping the small companies because often it is a bit of a David Goliath thing. You've got these companies that hire 300 staff coming in and kind of trying to do a bit of a race to the bottom. We'll go cheaper. We'll go, we'll do it faster or whatever. But the underdogs, that could be someone you know from next door. It could be someone in your community who's just trying to provide for his family or her family. And yeah, that's nice. You can actually have a real conversation with someone. They're the ones who pay the bills. They're the ones who ask for the changes. They're the ones who want to make your product better. It's quite a human connection as opposed to being like a cog in the wheel. You speak to someone in one of these bigger companies, you give them a second thought. But it's, yeah, I like that. I do like supporting the underdogs, although I know that naturally over time we're going to work our way up market and we will move away from that eventually. But I still like to think we've got champions who talk about us all the time in a nice light.
I think that's really cool actually, because also as people use Flow and they are freeing up their time, or their organizations are becoming more efficient and growing more, then they are not simply, micro businesses. They actually start growing and scaling, which I know has happened for quite a few of your clients where they've had astronomical growth. And, it's been really wonderful to see those grow. So yeah, you have such a wide range of clients. I think that's really cool. Is there anything you'd like to comment on the industry at the moment about, accreditation registers or anything like that?
So we support quite a few industries now. We started in the asbestos industry. We've moved into fire safety and more recently Legionella, which is why I only talk about that at home, or hopefully not too much. But yeah, we do things in indoor air quality, which is again why I've got an indoor air quality filter in the house, and we've got dehumidifiers and all this kind of stuff. There's always stuff happening in each one of those industries, and there's a big push in the mould industry at the moment. AWAB's law is recently been enacted, where social housing providers will have to legally fix some of these damp and mold issues. So that's a big thing. That's going to drive a whole change in that industry, because until you have a standard that people can work from, it's just cowboy land, and people will just do things like however they think is right. You get people who go fog buildings and they think that that's correct. Generally it's not. So moisture is the enemy. There's usually like an underlying cause of a mold issue in a home. And when I was speaking to one of my guests recently on my podcast, recorded here at your studio, they said a lot of these buildings weren't designed for the way that people are living now. So you've got a building that was built with the intention of having one family, and you've got multiple families living there, or someone puts a power shower in and the ventilation isn't sufficient. So a lot of the time you can kind of trace it back to like an issue with the building itself and how it's being lived in and used. So that's really interesting. We're trying to sort of keep abreast of any changes. We've already got a mold inspection template for Australia, which was built with an expert over there. But in the UK, it's like the star of the industry, and it's like exciting. The reason for it happening isn't a good one, though. There's a young lad who died in one of these social housing, and the council wasn't quick enough to respond, or I guess the housing association, wasn't quick enough to resolve those issues. Unfortunately, he died as a result of that. So that's why it's all kicked off. So that's the mold industry. Every industry has its own history, journey. In the asbestos world, they're talking about, should accreditation be mandatory for surveyors? It's a big thing at the minute. And it's like a hotly discussed topic. So, at the moment they're talking about that, and the costs are prohibitive for a lot of companies. So you're talking like, £20,000 just for year one and things like that. So potentially that would put a lot of our clients out of business if that happens. And I would hate to see that happen. I don't think it would have any real impact personally on the standard of surveys, because a lot of them do follow this sort of standard anyway. Having this like mandatory accreditation, then I just don't think it's the right idea, because it's about the skill of the person, not the company. So it's the company that gets accredited. So yeah, I could talk all day about all the different changes around the industry, but it's interesting for me because every time we go into a new industry, there's all these challenges, there's all these changes. I'm obsessed with Legionella at the minute. So there's 3 standards for Legionella. I must know them back to front. It's kind of mental. I'll flush a shower for a minute when I go into a hotel now, which why would I do that? Because I know too much. I know too much now about water stagnation and infrequently used outlets and stuff like that. So yeah, I do like to get obsessed with stuff, but it can have a bit of a negative effect on your life as well, because you're just like, oh my goodness, what is in this air? What is in this home?
Well, one of my clients is actually going through a wild health journey where they are experiencing a mold allergy and have been so unwell for 6 months, and they're living in a hotel now. And I still don't fully understand what's happened or how that could have even impacted them so much. But actually, so many people struggle with damp or mold or issues like this in their homes. In fact, the expert you've worked with, is it in Australia?
Mm-hmm.
I think you told me that there was a link to miscarriages or something like that. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, she's called Nicole. She is the founder of the Australian College of Environmental Studies. And she's what I think you call it like a building biologist,
okay,
or healthy homes expert. And she had a series of miscarriages which were caused by the mold, by the environment that she was living in. So mold tends to be, it comes to light, or it happens when you have a water damaged building and it doesn't get remediated properly. But a lot of the visible mold that you see, that's quite far along the journey.
Okay.
There is mold that you just can't see. It's on the surface of things, you just can't see it. When it's visible, that's like, oh, it's really bad now. So she had a series of miscarriages, couldn't quite figure out the reason, realized that it was to do with this moldy environment that she was living in. Mold can affect your body in all sorts of crazy ways. It's linked to chronic fatigue syndrome. They reckon it's possibly linked to MS, which is why there's a higher case. They reckon there's a high case of MS cases up north where it's damper and colder. So they say that actually there's possibly a link there. It's linked to all sorts of things with asthma, breathing, and at its worst, it can kill you. But you can actually have black mold growing on your brain and stuff like that. It's really awful. Yeah.
Wow.
Like I say, I know too much, but it's awful.
I mean, that is a bit of a thing in itself. So how do you find that you don't end up living in the fear of what could happen and obsessive thoughts about mold and all these things? That feels like it would be really hard to be in your brain.
I think if you'd asked me like 5 years ago that I'd be like obsessing over indoor air quality and mold and stuff like that, I would have laughed out loud.
I would have definitely laughed at you. Yeah.
But it's like one of those things, isn't it? Like you don't know what you don't know. And there's a big push, I think, or not push, there's more of a renewed interest now in like your health. Younger generations, they think about, what they eat, more and more like the air they breathe, things like this. It's right. This internet information world that we live in makes it very easy to find out lots of things. You ask ChatGPT any question and you get the answer. So I do think that, like for me, I just have this like thirst for learning. I wouldn't say it necessarily makes me like paranoid or anything like that, but it makes me think more carefully about my choices. So I'm going to have an indoor air quality filter now, because I can see the advantages of reducing the particulate matter and, volatile organic compounds and stuff like that. And, one of our clients was kind enough to send me a little meter, which we've got on our bookshelf. And you probably don't know what it does because you've never really looked at it, but it tells me all of the different things.
You talk about the radons all the time. Is that the right? Is that the right term?
Yeah, it measures radon and stuff. But the thing is, like, Brian Johnson is always in the news at the minute, isn't he, for talking about don't die and live. He wants to live forever. That's his kind of mission, and I follow him, and I just find it fascinating. If someone can extend their life by just eating the right things, breathing the right things, not doing the bad things like the smoking and the drinking and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm all about habit stacking. So like for me, that's just another habit to add. And the habit could be don't do something, or it could be be in this environment or whatever.
But I think also something about you is you like to learn and learn and learn, and then you like to go and tweak things. So tiny, tiny micro improvements all the time, and habit stack or micro improvements that move the needle, take a business forward. You're very tactical, and I really see that in you as a gift. And then on the other side, your brother, your co-founder David, is so civically minded. So he's very much about community and how can we do stuff that's going to help our communities and make stuff safer. And I think the two of you together are really a solution-focused duo. You're quite a power duo. I'd love to know, what's it like working with family? What's it like working with your bro?
Honestly, it's amazing. Like, my brother is the smartest guy that I know. You say that I'm focused. I know you sometimes think that I'm obsessed. I get very obsessed with a thing until it's done. I'm definitely a perfectionist. But you should see my brother. When he gets to work, he has a list of 10 things and he just smashes through them. Like, honestly, it's a real skill. So, he'll get distracted here and there, but generally speaking, he just has an objective for the day, and then he does the thing. And if he doesn't do it, he's up at night when he can't sleep and he's finishing off. It's an incredible focus. He has tremendous focus, my brother. My sister Amber also works with us now, and she's a budding marketer. She's learned a lot of the skills herself. She's taught herself, Adobe Premiere Pro and Creative Cloud and all that sort of stuff. And she's got a natural gift for how things should look. And, she's been brilliant. Really, it's been great working with Amber as well, because when she's behind the camera, I can really have a laugh, and I'm confident-ish on camera. But when Amber's behind the camera, I'm myself and I'm goofing around and stuff like that. So that's been really cool. Some people might call it nepotism. 3/8 of our company is family. I quite like that. You take some shortcuts. You don't have to figure out if you can speak to someone and communicate with them well. You don't have to figure out, if you're going to argue and fall out well, all that kind of stuff. You've done that 20,000 times as kids when you were kicking the S out of each other. And I'm not saying that happened, but, my brother once hit me with a Hoover. So I know that we can fight and get over it, and that's fine. So it's been a good way for us to build a good team around the family, because me and my brother, we have this great connection. Anyone else we bring in, they see that, and they want to be, I guess, hopefully part of it. And we're just like a little family. We are just like a little family, to be honest. I've known Mark and Andrew, who we work with, for years and years, and yeah, it's nice. I would always do that again. Like, if I was to go again, I would start with family.
I think it's interesting your point there about nepotism or question about it, because actually at the end of the day, you are taking on a lot of risk as an entrepreneur. So you are building the team that you need to thrive. And if you know, like, and trust people that have your back and who you can interact with, and that's saving a huge chunk of time, which means you can do more work that matters. So, and flow is all about doing what matters. So for me, it could be viewed as nepotism. I think if you were only hiring family and friends, that would be an issue. And actually that's not the case. So you have staff from other cultures and backgrounds. And what's really cool that I love is actually your supply chain. I really love watching who you work with, because from my perspective, looking in, this is a very Paul King value, and David as well. But it's very much about who can I uplift. So when you are needing a graphic designer, or when you need a translator or interpreter, or English coach or whatever, it's thinking about, well, who do I know in my network that would be the right fit for this, and how can I uplift them? And so you're constantly uplifting your own circumstances, your own immediate community, but then that also has ripple effects, because the clients are getting a better service, but then also they are uplifted. And then you're working with other experts, like the Mould expert you mentioned, Nicole, or others around the country and around the globe, who really are incredible experts in their field, but you taking their knowledge and sharing it with your audience, and then that uplifts their voices and their audiences. And so one of the things that I love about Flow is, you have most of your business through referrals. And that is a pretty cool thing. I mean, some of your clients are making more on their referrals than they pay you per month, right? It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's like the official partners, should we
Yeah.
say. We've got like a partnership program which works really well. But yeah, like we do get a massive chunk of our clients now through referrals. And usually that's like someone that I know personally from the conversations we've had. And it feels like a sort of friendly, hey, you know these guys, you need some software. You know, they're really great. I call them our champions. We've got a bunch of champions. We always like to work, like you say, with suppliers who we know and trust, because I feel like sometimes, like when you work with a new client or supplier, it's a bit like dating. You know, you're getting to know that person, you are asking them questions, they're asking you questions, but it's the same as the nepotism thing. Like, how well do you truly know someone? You've got to kind of get to know someone over time. So that's why the nepotism thing, or working with family rather, is a bit of a nice shortcut, I think, because you spent years getting to know that person. And it's the reason we work with your studio, because, you know, I know you'll provide a good service, and I know that you do a great job, and we'll get a warm reception, all this kind of stuff. Like if I go to some other studio, I don't know if I'll get those things, and I'm taking a bit of a chance. So I think I'm definitely a believer in karma. Like if you treat someone well, they'll treat you well too. Never, you know, burn your bridges on the way out and stuff like that. If we have a client who, for whatever reason, needs to go elsewhere, it doesn't happen very often, we're like, how can we help you do that? What will make this easier for you? Because in 2-3 years time, they might refer you someone, or they might, you know, come back, who knows? But even if it wasn't for that, it's just a nice thing to do, isn't it? Like, you know, you spend a lot of time at work, and building a business should be enjoyable. You know, don't be this ruthless Scrooge McDuck type, because that doesn't really help anyone.
It's funny what you're saying about karma, and also how sometimes some clients need to leave you, because people do naturally, you know, they might sign up for a subscription for anything. So much of our world is subscription based nowadays, and it will continue to be. But what I really love about the flow ethos is you're also really adamant about what you don't want. And so I have seen this. I've seen you take calls or listen in on things you've been sent where maybe a client's spoken to one of your team in a way that's just not on. It's just not okay. It's racist, or for whatever reason, it's just not appropriate. And you will deal with that, and you'll deal with it really quickly, but also very confidently, as in, this is our line and there is no negotiating here. This is just not okay to talk to our staff this way. And so you really do lead very decisively, and I love that. It's so cool to see. And would you like to share, I mean, your story of some clients where you have been like, I'm sorry, you're not a fit for us?
Yeah, we've got like a bit of a, let's call it a 2 strikes rule. Yeah, you're right. We are really clear about what we don't want. And the reason for that is, I've worked in companies before where you've been told, this is our client, they're a complete a-hole, but they're our client, you have to deal with them. Can you imagine when someone rings in, you know that they're going to give you a hard time, they're going to be really horrible to you, that gives you this sinking stomach feeling, you know, it makes you feel really awful. And I've worked in companies like that where that's just accepted, and I hated that. You know, sometimes you might get clients that are a bit of a mood hoover or something like that, that's fine. But if they're rude or they're insulting or something like that, then someone in that company should draw a line and say, right, this doesn't match our values. We don't want this client. I don't care how much money it is. It's not about money at the end of the day. You know, it's going to affect staff morale and things like this. There's lots of other effects that will have on the business. But it's like, if you don't have that hard line and you start letting people through, then that just becomes the culture. That becomes the norm. So we've always taken a very sort of like, nope, this is what we want. This is what we don't want. If you are a bad fit client for us, we'll tell you right away. We generally give people a 2 strikes rule because they might be having a bad day. They might, who knows? You don't necessarily know what's going on in their life. So I would say, well, okay, you've spoken to such and such in a really awful way. You know, I don't appreciate that. We're all here just to help you and to try and give you a good service. You know, you have to reciprocate. You know, it's a two-way sort of relationship. So if they, usually when we sort of give them that warning, you know, they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to speak like that, or whatever it might be. occasionally they don't listen and they do something again, and then that's it, they're gone. We'll give them a bit of a lead time just to make sure they get their data out and all that sort of stuff, but we don't want to work with certain people like that, and our staff, I think, respect us for that. I mean, we've also had times where, and this is quite common, I think, within the surveying industry specifically, is that sometimes people think they know better than you. And like, we absolutely defer to our clients' knowledge, right? But they can sometimes be quite rude if they think you've like misinterpreted a standard or something like that. And I remember it happening to my brother one time where we were onboarding a customer and they were kind of poo-pooing our work and saying, this isn't right. And my brother, he's very funny like this. He just sort of sat and sort of listened, nodded his head, and I was kind of getting angrier and angrier, and just that's my way, and I'd keep it quiet. And they were going on and on and on. You're wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And then my brother just sort of like, he just went, okay. And he's just been sort of mentally logging all of these things, and it was just hilarious. He said, this is on this page of this standard, and if you check this one, and if you check this calculation here, and he just put this guy in his place. And I just thought, well, not in a nasty way, but in like a sort of like, yeah, we absolutely do know what we're talking about. Like, this is our career. We spend our lives doing this. Like, you might have looked at that standard once. We look at it very regularly. So yeah, so we are very clear about like who we do and don't want to work with. And I think that's important. I think any business should have that. You lose clients for whatever reason all the time. It's pretty normal. Some things are things that you can do something about. Some things are things you can't. Sometimes when clients leave, you can't do anything about that. But what you can control is the types of clients you let in and the types of things that you tolerate as well.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I love how you have, boundaries about what you will or won't accept, but also just the way you do look after your clients and they love you, and you get all these referrals, and it's great. For anyone listening, they might or watching, they might think, hey, you've got it easy, you've had it so cool, like look at you've got this cool family business, like everything's so cush, as we say in the Northeast, like good for you, like you've had it, like it handed to you on a plate. And a lot of people might not realize that this isn't your first rodeo in business. I guess what I wanted to say is, to me, my business is in the creative industries, but I also have this weird thing, because what is podcasting? It's kind of still blowing up now. Like, what is the industry? So it kind of skirts between creative industries, media, and tech, right? And one of the things I've seen personally from the tech industry is there's huge investment in there. And there's also a lot of people are chasing investment. One of the things I love about Flow Software Solutions is it is bootstrapped. It's every decision you make is you and David, and you're a duo and you're doing it together, but you have put yourselves on the line and your funds on the line. And it's not like some kind of everything's been handed to you. You've grafted, and there's been late nights and early mornings, and actually there's still late nights, because you tweaking and optimizing and improving all the time. So is there anything you'd want to say to that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think anyone who is kind of thinking, yeah, you've had things handed to you, you kind of have to know the journey, don't you? So like my brother and I, we started our first business in our early 20s. And that was a time tracking and invoicing tool that we built. It was, at the time, it was incredible because it was like visualizing your time and how your time is being spent. And we struggled to monetize that, so that business wasn't successful. But we did learn a lot along the way. And my brother and I ended up falling out over that business, unfortunately. And we didn't, we definitely had our differences towards the end. But that was because I wanted to keep going, and he wanted to draw a line under it, which is fair enough. But in hindsight, like the lessons that we learned were pretty incredible. But then we spent many years on our own path. So David spent time working in businesses where he was going to build systems for them, and he worked for a company in Silicon Valley for a while. And I was working in support, sort of supporting tech, doing tech support for a company, weirdly kind of related to the housing industry, which we're kind of like skirting around now, which is interesting. And then after that, I learned to code. So, without any coding knowledge, I like playing poker. So I made a poker game, and I like the technical challenge of doing that. So that was cool. So then, yeah, I worked for my dad for a while, learned the skills that I kind of been lacking before in that first business. And it's funny, I don't use any of those skills. I do. I can speak the language of coding now, which is interesting. So if I need to articulate something to David, I know exactly how to say it, which I'll never be as good as him. I would say I'm good, but I'm not David. That's for sure. The thing that kept me going was just a supportive family. So like yourself and the rest of the family, you have to have people who are willing to accept your vision of the world. So if you think you're going to be successful, you might be, but it might not be for 5 years or 10 years. You have to have people to kind of lift you up and keep going. Yep, you're doing it. You're doing great. And then also you've got to have the perseverance to actually keep going. So in the beginning, it was me and David working in a very tiny office. We started out doing vehicle route planning software, which is completely different to what we're doing now. We got we won a grant. We used that to pivot, essentially, when we realized it wasn't working. We pivoted into this new software tool that we've built. It was a problem space we already knew. But then, it was late nights at the office, eating terrible food because nothing was open, and you were trying to get, a client onboarded around the clock, and it was hard graft. But my brother is a grafter, I'm a grafter, and I think, we were able to then bring in Mark, our first employee. He took a lot of the load off, and then, we've just continued doing that. And I still wear about 50 hats, but I think the fact is I've got people I can delegate to now, so that's good. I don't know what the next stage is going to be like. I've never been to this. We've gone as far as we've ever been, so the next stage will be interesting to me because it's less about doing things myself, and I am definitely a perfectionist and a control freak when it comes to the work because I always think I can do it better, but handing that off to somebody else is the next step. But what you were saying is, about the investment and bootstrapping, you mentioned that. So we've fully funded everything ourselves. We have bootstrapped it. Our product is completely bootstrapped. So actually the only outside finance we had was a bounce back loan right at the start of COVID, which were being thrown out left, right, and center. So we took advantage of that. But other than that, everything's completely customer driven. So which is like super gratifying because we're only going to get paid if our customers pay us. It's a hell of an incentive to do a good job and make sure that your clients are getting value. And really, realistically, you want to be giving your clients like 5-10 times the value, like of what they're paying you. So if we charge our clients X, we should be giving 10X worth of value. That's, at least in my opinion. Like otherwise, why are they going to choose us? Why are they going to just choose someone else? So
one of the things that strikes me about Flow is actually you have these amazing benefits for the customers. So they come on board, they pay one flat fee per license, but then you also give them custom cover pages, which looks amazing. So everything's so beautifully optimized for them, and it's great. But as well as the customers, you also give your staff a very different experience. So I don't know how comfortable you are talking about this, but I'm gobsmacked by the bonus scheme that you have. So if every month, depending on what the sales are, your staff can actually make additional funds on top of their wages, which I don't know how many other firms or other organizations are doing that. I think that's incredibly motivating.
Yeah, I think people take a big risk when they join you, right? Like they have chosen to put their fate in with you, like as in like you are the controller of the ship. You say where it goes, and it's important to develop them, make sure they have the freedom to develop themselves, but also our business is different to a lot of businesses. It's a SaaS business, software as a service, is about recurring revenue. So that is the metric that we track. What is the recurring revenue this month? And if you're doing something right, that should be going up every single month. If you've got a leaky bucket, and that means like you're not targeting the right customers or something else like along those lines, you've got a bad product, you will be, we call it churning, you'll be losing customers every month. So I say a leaky bucket because you've got to get more customers to fill that leak. every single month before you can start getting new ones. So our retention rate is about 100, just over 100. So if we do literally nothing, most months we would increase our number of customers because they grow, they expand their team, and then they pay for more licenses. And that's sort of a testament, like a good product, and we're solving good problems. But in a company like ours, because we're not always like cash strapped or anything like that, then we can afford to give our staff a bonus. So if we add so much in recurring revenue every month, what we say is like we'll split that evenly amongst all staff, apart from me and David, of course, but they'll benefit from that in that month. So if we have a really good month the month before, they're getting a bonus in this month's paycheck. So yeah, that's cool. I think that aligns everyone to like, oh, this is the growth. This is what we've achieved together. So like the support team work together to maintain customers and retain them rather. I and my colleague Andrew will be kind of onboarding new customers and doing sales demos and stuff like that. And David will be pushing out features that again retain clients better. So everyone kind of works together to, and obviously the marketing team as well, bringing in new customers. So everyone works together to build that future. And I think everyone should be rewarded for that as well, because they have, like I say, they've yoked their fate to yours, and you should be able to reward them for that.
I think it's a really interesting perspective, taking on new staff. Startup world is not always easy, so it is a big risk for staff coming on board to kind of dive in and be part of that ship, as you said, to be a shipmate. One thing I'd like to ask you about being a podcaster myself, you are now a podcaster too, and your own podcast host of the Modern Compliance podcast. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about what led you to start a podcast and also how it's going for you.
That's been like super interesting, to be honest. Like, I think about where we started, and I think about the first time I did sort of some public speaking. I got myself out of my comfort zone on purpose when I realized I wasn't comfortable speaking in front of an audience. And that was when I was doing the coding with my dad, and I realized I wanted to start something else. And I spoke in front of a group of Laravel PHP experts. That was what I was coding with at the time. And I remember it was the most well-attended PHP Northeast event I've ever been to. And it was terrifying. There was just so many people who couldn't even sit down. It was like, my God. I was doing a talk on GraphQL, which is an API layer like interface. So that was like super scary. And I remember thinking, my goodness, my heart was just banging away in my chest and all this kind of stuff. Then David and I pitched for some money, which was to some panel of experts in the vehicle route planning sort of space. And that was interesting because we had a pitch lined up. David did his bit. He kind of froze up, very unlike David. He's not like this at all. He kind of froze up a little bit. I had to sort of finish that pitch off. And I thought, you know what, that wasn't so hard. That was all right. I don't know what I was so worried about. And then ever since then, I've kind of like steadily been putting myself more out of my comfort zone. And I have no problem doing this now. I don't even get a tiny little flutter in my chest anymore. I used to get a little woo, but not anymore. I can't remember the last time that happened, to be honest. But yeah, so I think that the podcast, me hosting a podcast, is like a good next step, because it's quite hard asking. You'll know yourself. It's really hard asking the questions because every guest responds differently. You have to kind of like figure out the right topic and tone and all this kind of stuff. And like when I'm doing my podcast, I'm not necessarily an expert in the industry that I'm talking in. So I have to like learn all that stuff before. I've got to do some research, which I find really interesting. I have to build that relationship. But actually, to be honest, that's kind of like why I'm starting the podcast, is like I get to speak to these amazing people who are doing amazing things and like ask them questions. And like my curious brain is always just like, yeah, like more questions. I really want to know this thing. So like that's really cool. And then from a sort of marketing perspective, obviously it's great to get your face out there and for people to know who you are and trust you. And I don't know whether people like me, but I certainly like to get my face out there if I can. So I think, what you don't want to be is the software company. It's just like a complete black box from the outside, no one can see, and like no personality or anything like that. So Yeah, I'm sure it'll get me into trouble at some point. I'll probably say the wrong thing, or who knows. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying being on the other side, like the side you're on now. Like, I find that quite engaging.
I love watching it. I mean, I love podcasting. You talk about Legionella, I talk about microphones. It's just, we have a lot of key focuses in our house, shall we say. I'd love to know, actually, when you became a dad, how has that changed you in your view of work and how you show up and how you serve your customers? Has anything changed for you since becoming a dad?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that the biggest change, two things. One is that I'm not the last one in the office every night, which is why that used to be the case when I was always working myself to the bone. And because you're a business owner, there was no person to tell me not to stop, because you get it too, and you were doing the same thing. So that's been good. Having an excuse to leave work on time, go home, spend time with my daughter. I'm loving that. But I think also, what we do is create software and report templates to keep people safe. So asbestos, right? It's a weird subject to talk about. Everyone talks about it in a sort of similar way, but I feel that ultimately we are helping to create reports that help people understand risks and therefore not put themselves in danger. So when I think about it from my own point of view, like as a parent, like I think about the effects of asbestos, which it tends to have, like it's a 20-30 year lead time. You get some like lung damage from asbestos as a child. It might take 20 or 30 years to kind of turn into cancer. And I mean, there's a thing in New Zealand at the minute with play sand, which has been, it's a coloured play sand that they find in classrooms, which has been imported from China. And that has been found to contain asbestos, which I just think about it from my own point of view, like, what would I think about that? Well, I'd be horrified, So it does give me a bit more of a lens on the mission, like I do think that it's important work that we do. And people, like I said before, people don't know what they don't know. So you're not only helping people through the work, but you're also educating people on the risks of things as well. So yeah, I would like to think that when our daughter's older, that I've left the world a slightly better place than when I started working on this.
It's beautiful, and charity begins at home, and you're doing that in your community. You're uplifting people, your own family, your friends, your community, locally, and then your business community, and then the wider supply chain of customers and suppliers. So I think it really is amazing. And I just want to say, in terms of the safety and becoming a parent and things like that, I think more than ever, you do what your value and your mission is of Flow, which is to help people do what matters. And you are doing that because you're so much more connected to that than ever.
100%. Yeah, it's nice to make it real. We are removed from an industry which there are so many very clever, talented, hardworking people who go out day in, day out, and they do these important bits of work. To be able to support them, being a supporting role, is extremely gratifying.
Cool. Well, I only have one last question for you. This is like your third time on Nurture Your Zest, so in the score. What is your number one word to nurture your zest?
Oh, I should have totally prepared something.
You could say a phrase.
I think in the past what I said was
books,
peace, or quiet. That doesn't really work so well in our household, I think, at the moment. But
is it
I'll say connection with my daughter, connection with you. I think those connections that I have outside of work definitely fuel me in my main work. And I think that in the past I would have said something like growth, or and that's definitely important for a business. But it's the things you do day to day outside of work that keep you going in your work. And I'd say connection is probably a good one. I'm really enjoying connecting with my daughter right now and playing and all that kind of stuff. Gives me vitality.
She is a lot of fun. She's a hoot.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. King. It's been nice to have you on the show today, and it's kind of funny because, yeah, it's a really nice way to connect. So I really enjoyed having you here as a guest.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Nurture Your Zest today. If you're feeling extra kind, it would mean so much to me if you could share this episode with your friends or family or anyone who you think might feel inspired by this content. Liking, sharing, or interacting with our content is a great way to support us as content creators, and it helps us to bring interesting stories and more people to you. This podcast is a Flamingo Heights podcast studio production, and I've been your host, Ashleigh King. If you liked today's episode, follow the video on your screen now, or check out the link in your show notes to find similar content.